Welcome to In Her Own Name, where women stop whispering their greatness and tell the power of their own stories, with your host, Lillian Ogbogoh. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are, and welcome to an episode of In Her Own Name. This is where women stop whispering their brilliance and reclaim voice, legacy, and presence. Now, today I'm joined by a woman who's made truth telling her life's work. I'm talking about Sharon Hurley Hall. She's an author, educator, and an anti racism activist who has helped thousands make sense of the systems we live in and why we need to dismantle them, why we must dismantle them. A former journalist with over 30 years' experience, Sharon is the author of I'm Tired of Racism, True Stories of Existing While Black and Exploring Shade-isms. And for those who don't know, we're going to go into what that is. And as well as the creator of Sharon's Anti-Racism's newsletter and the founder of Share Anti-Racism's Community. So join me and welcome my incredible guest. Hey, Sharon.
Hey, Lillian, thanks for having me on your podcast. This is
You
wonderful.
you were so welcome. I mean, I had no choice but to have you on. You wrote a book that says I'm tired of racism. We have to talk about that.
Let us talk about it. Let's talk about it. Oh my gosh. That,
Okay. So I was going to say, what is that moment that moved anti-racism work from something you understood to something you had to act on, write on, and commit to as a daily practice?
yeah, that is like many people. The murder of George Floyd really got me feeling that bone deep weariness and feeling the need to
Mm,
use my gifts to make a difference where I could. Now, I at that
mm-hmm,
point had been a journalist. I had taught journalism at university. I had a freelance writer writing about digital marketing. And I thought, well, these gifts of writing and education can't be here to tell people how to put pop-ups on their website. There has to be more that I'm called to than that. And I was just while that was catalytic, it wasn't the first time I had actually written about racism. I had done it on and off over the years. And my book, Exploring Shadism, which is colorism by another name, is
yes.
was about another aspect of inequality. And so I had written about it before, but like many of us, you go through life. I worked in England for 15 years and I experienced racism there. I lived in France for a year. I experienced racism daily there. And a lot of the times you just swallow it. You talk about it with your Black friends and you move on. You try to live your life. And George Floyd's murder made me say enough,
Mm,
made me say, I need to do my part, right? I need to use my gift. And also, it started out as catharsis
yeah.
because I was so angry and upset, right? And so I started writing. I started writing. And in fact, I'm Tired of Racism. The title actually of this book was actually the second piece that I wrote. The first piece that I wrote was called While Black Thoughts on the Assumption of Wrongness. It's about that idea that when you exist in this skin, people will assume that you are not entitled to be there, that there's something wrong with your presence, with your being,
Mm,
and so on. And you can see how that connects with George Floyd's murder. And
yes.
then it was as if the floodgates opened, Lillian, because once I started, I really couldn't stop. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. I started on Medium, and within a few months, I had moved to my own anti-racism newsletter. We're now 5 years and 4 months in, I think, maybe 5 months in, nearly 5.5 years in. I launched it in August 2020, and it's still going.
Nice.
So, yeah, I just, I had to say something. I had to do something. I had to do my part.
And George Floyd's murder coincided with the pandemic where people were at home. We had nothing to distract us. And so a
Mm,
lot, it was so deep and so personal. And it's like, it was alarming. It was alarming. And I can understand why that would have shaped where you are right now in this conversation and the books and the newsletters. Why the title? And the title is obvious to me. But when you decided I was going to, when you decided you were putting this book together, why this 5 words? I'm tired of racism. What made you say that was going to be that title?
Because that is what the message I wanted to convey. I wanted to convey that people who share our identity, people who walk in this skin, people of the global majority are experiencing this thing every day in so many ways. And it is wearing and we are tired of it. This is not what has happened in our lifetime. This is what has happened to the generations before. This is multi-generational trauma for centuries. And it's epigenetic trauma, right, that we feel in ourselves. And so I never actually considered any other title. That was that book, it's kind of in your face,
Yes.
but there's
very
no
much.
mistake. There is no mistaking where I'm coming from. I'm tired of racism, as are we all. Deal with
Exactly.
it. And now what are you going to do about it?
Yes. The title is like, is bam, this is what I am. There's no, let's kind of equivocate the point. Let's make it, no, it's, I'm tired of racism. And in your past, keeping that theme of being tired of racism, keeping the theme of this is now your worth. In one of your past interviews, you said racism is in the water, not the shark. What does that mean to you? Because I want to understand it a bit better.
Right. So first of all, I want to credit the singer Guante for that. He wrote a piece and that line was in it. Racism is the water, not the shark. People are all over here looking at the individual acts, the microaggressions, the calling people the N-word, all of those things. Whereas it's the water, it's the whole thing that we're swimming in, the whole society that we're living in. It's in all the policies, it's in all the processes. It's something that is baked into how our societies run, because many societies, I mean, you could talk about the US explicitly as a society that was founded on genocide and exploitation, but none of the European countries have their hands clean. They all went sailing around the world to grab people and enslave them and exploit them and extract things. And so, yeah, I mean, it is the water. And so you have to recognize that in order to change the things that really need to change the great ingrained anti-Blackness, to change the societal norms that suggest it's not okay for Black people to have their natural hair, to change the behavioral norms that mean that when we get animated among ourselves, people suddenly assume that a fight is about to break out or that we're angry about something. Change all of those things.
Yeah.
Everything that we are was made into a problem or a crime in order to justify enslavement. And you don't get out of centuries of that narrative without taking a long, hard look and having a willingness to change. So that is the water. That is the water. It's not about you calling me the N-word today. It's about your ancestors dehumanized my ancestors for centuries. And
And
that
that
is
you
the
think
water.
that it's okay to then
Yes.
use the N word.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in things like system design, which says you cannot just change one thing. Because even if, so let's say, like using the analogy of system design will say, okay, you have a problem with your ceiling, but changing one shingle on the ceiling is not going to fix the problem. It's going to patch up a section of it, but it's not going to fix the problem. And if you keep swapping out the shingles, all you're going to be doing is spending a lot of time shingle swapping without actually dealing with the issues. And so when you think about that, it's when you say it's the water, not the shark lives in the water and is going to do
Yes.
what it's programmed to do in that water.
Yes, and there's another analogy, which is the groundwater analogy. The groundwater is poisoned, everything is poisoned, right? And it's the founding premise of many societies, the way in which they enrich themselves, the way in which they became the so-called powers they are today,
Yes.
was because of those horrible actions that their ancestors took in the past. And so you have to have a reckoning with that, I believe. And it's interesting, your shingle analogy is interesting because you look at the DEI backlash and rollbacks in the US, and not just in the US, because similar things are happening in other places too.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere
There's a
global.
trickle effect.
It's global. And what you see is that for some people, DEI was about swapping shingles, right? Some
And
never
yeah.
bothered to replace the roof, right?
And now it's all falling apart.
But there you go. And, that's because they weren't committed. That's because it was performative. That's because they weren't committed to cleaning the water.
Yes.
Mm.
It was not about changing the water. It was just
Yeah.
about the
It
performance
was
of.
not, yeah. It's not about taking the shark out the water. It's about cleaning the water
Mm.
to make it inhospitable for the shark. And a lot of people never clean that water.
Yeah, because they're afraid of the skeletons that they will find.
Oh, yes. We could go down a whole other rabbit hole about skeletons. And,
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
yeah.
I
But
mean,
anyway.
you speak with incredible clarity about these complex systems, and your work behind it and your history of journalism. What is the role of storytelling in anti-racism, and how do we stay honest without burning out? How do you even stay honest without the fatigue of always being tired of racism?
Oh, two great questions, Lillian. Well, first of all, the role of storytellers, and I think possibly Toni Morrison said this. I can't quite remember if it was Toni Morrison, but quite likely, is to shine a light on the things that are happening. This is when artists do their work, when there's inequity, when there are things that need to be brought out into the light. And so that is the role of storytellers, to keep saying, we see you, we see what's happening.
Mm.
We're sharing this with people, we're letting people know that it's happening. There is a role for those people, just people like me, just as there's a role for the people who are marching in the streets, just as there's a role for the people who are changing policy, right? We all have different lanes that we can be in, but we're all working to the same goal. And actually, returning to the water analogy, one of the things that I've said a couple of times this year is that we have to be the drops. In other words, water is very powerful when drops get together. It created the Grand Canyon and all the valleys and all that kind of thing. So we have to remember that there's a bunch of us working on this, on undermining that system of racism and inequality. And we keep doing what we have to do, but then it's okay for us to go off for a second and then come back, because we also need to look after ourselves in this process. To answer your second question, there are ups and downs. There are definitely ups and downs. There are days when the weariness is deep, right? There are days when something new happens and you think, oh, and it reminds you of things that have happened to you as well. I mean, there was a recent story in the US about a pregnant Black woman whose pain was ignored. I did not look at the video. I did not look at the video.
Unfortunately, I saw clips of the video and then I had to shut it down because I'm like, let's.
And if you've ever been in the health system as a Black parent, some of those experiences will be familiar to you. And that is not just in the US.
No, that's global.
The UK. That is also global. I had my own experiences of having my pain ignored, of having my body wisdom ignored, which could have led to some serious consequences had I not come across a Jamaican midwife at the last minute who knew what was what and got me in front of the right people. So, on days like that, you do feel that bone deep weariness, and that's when you need to refill your cup. And that's why the analogy of the drops comes in, because I can step away for a minute, get myself back together, get regulated, knowing that there are other people also working on this. And so, yeah, there are days when I say, okay, today is the day I am going to watch something silly or read a romance, or my favorite thing to do, actually, because I live in Barbados most of the year, is to go to the beach, because I find seawater is immensely calming, soothing, and regulating. And so
You didn't have to drop that in there right now.
I know it's
We
winter for you all as you're listening now.
as we are about to face winter.
But yeah, go for a walk, get out in nature, even if you're in a wintry place, if I happen to be in a cold place, then go to the gym and go in the swimming pool. So I think it's really important. I'm very inspired by Patricia Hersey, Restless Resistance, right? And that's
Okay.
about the importance of reclaiming our rest as Black women and Black people, because in our history, rest was not encouraged. And
Oh
anytime
no,
we rest, we are
lazy.
stigmatized as being lazy, right? And this is where generational trauma is real, because when you hear that word, doesn't it just do something to you inside? But
Oh
you
yeah,
can't even
it's like,
explain, even though you know you're not lazy, right?
it's like it's funny when I see Black women embody that is, oh no, I can't rest because rest is lazy. I have to be
Yeah,
the first one up, the
yeah,
last one in
yeah.
bed. I'm like,
Nope.
okay, no.
No. So it's really revolutionary
Mm.
for us to reclaim it. My sister Lisa wrote a book called Space to Exhale, and it's all about that idea that we as Black women need that space,
Oh yeah,
right? So I think it's really important for us to reclaim that and to take that as a right for ourselves, especially if we're doing this kind of work. But even if we're not,
hmm
even if
any
we're
kind
not,
of work, your right to rest is
yes,
is a fundamental right.
it's
And
a, yeah.
I'm gonna switch gears very quickly because you spoke about the drops and how coming together and having the drops and being this community. But what would you say to those who are meant to be part of the drops, who call themselves allies, but hesitate to get into the water, so to speak, who hesitate to get uncomfortable, especially in corporate or community settings, but want the benefit of the word ally?
Well, ally is not a name that you give, a label that you give yourself. And I think the ship has been so tainted by those people that it's not a word I even use that much anymore. I tend to talk about advocates. And
Hmm.
in any case, all of it has to be active. Whether you're calling allyship or advocacy, it has to be active. It means doing something. It
Yes,
means facing the things you haven't faced. And, discomfort is not the same as oppression. It just isn't, right? And so I think that people have to recognize this and to really take a good, long, hard look at themselves in the mirror and think, well, what am I willing to give up in order to make this right, in order to
yeah.
do the work that I know needs to be done? And if you're not willing to do that, then you can't call yourself an ally. It's as simple as that.
I think whenever I think of an ally or an advocate, I go to the movie Hidden Figures.
Oh, yes. Great movie.
And that was advocacy in action. And I think the scene I'm talking about, where they were walking into the room, what's his name had walked in. Help me, his name has
I,
just escaped me.
I can't remember his name, but okay, he walked in. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they closed the door on Taraji Henson's character. And
Yeah.
he opened the door and says, if she's not in the room, I am not in the room.
That is it. That is it. Exactly, Lillian. How are you opening doors? How are you creating space? How are
Yes,
you redressing imbalances? If it's just words, does it even count?
exactly. And just
Right?
sorry to interrupt, Kevin Costner. Oh no, his name escaped me. I was searching
Yeah.
everywhere and his name escaped.
It's like, this is what you have to do. And we do it for each other too, right? We appear on each other's podcasts, we promote each
Exactly.
other's work, we do all that kind of thing, right? We lift as we climb. We don't pull the
Yes.
ladder up behind us, right?
Yes.
And I think that advocates have to do that even more because they are so many unearned advantages, and it's time to use those advantages to make the wrongs right.
And just for people listening, this is not about saying, okay, so you've had an advantage, which means we're going to come and dig into your pocket or for you to give up your house. Or that's not what this is. And I think that is where people have misconstrued what it means when they talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It doesn't mean that you don't get to have. It means we just level the playing field so that
Yes, everybody
everybody
gets to
gets to
have.
play. Everybody gets to have. And
Yeah.
but doesn't mean that because they have, you have less. It means we make
No,
space for
it
people to
it
have,
is not pie. It is not pie,
you know,
right?
but it's been sold that way. Or, if somebody is a diversity hire, it means they haven't earned the right to be in that room. It's like,
Oh, please. First of all, diversity hire is coded language for the N word. And right, first of all, let's start there. Second of all, as a Black person, you have to be twice, three times as good or as qualified just to get in the door. So if anybody is in diversity hire, it's not people that share our identity, Lillian. It's
no,
other people, right? It's the people that are, it's the Nepo babies. It's the people whose daddy got them the job, right? And
you
I'm
know,
not saying that you're not allowed to do that. All I'm saying is you can't get your opportunities that way and then be upset at leveling the playing field to let people who don't have those same advantages in. Right?
exactly.
It's just not fair.
And then you start branding words about meritocracy, and it's like, I don't think you will know what that looks like if it came up and smacked you. But I digress.
Well, there's never been a meritocracy. That's fair.
you know,
So,
I've sat in spaces where people are like, oh, he's a CEO or he's come in as a CFO, and he's talked candidly about how he's gotten that role because, somebody else who was sitting in another role said, oh, we need this role. I know this person. Let's sit and have
mhm,
breakfast.
yeah. And so the question is, if you are an advocate, how are you making those opportunities available to people that don't normally get invited to breakfast or after work drinks or golf or whatever it happens to be? How are you making sure? I think there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you're not privy to. And one of the ways that advocates can show up is to just pull that curtain away and let's see what's going on.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that conversation about breakfast was like, oh, oh, okay. So then my question is, how can I have those breakfasts to be in those rooms? Then it's like,
Yeah.
we should all be having breakfast.
We should all be having breakfast. We should all have the opportunity to get in those rooms,
Exactly.
right?
We should all be having breakfast and let's have breakfast together and let's see who else we can put together. And before people think this is a let's bash advocates, let's bash everybody, because of the
Oh,
nature of your work, you've even addressed you're not just addressing racism as a whole, you're addressing colorism, shadeism, you are addressing those important things. So before you think this show is just saying one thing, I would have you listen with a level of curiosity.
yes. And I want to say also that I wrote Anti-Racism, but I also founded the Share Anti-Racism Community, which is a polycultural community of people working to counter racism in their daily lives and features accountability check-ins. It features reparations practice. 10% of membership goes into supporting micro reparations for other activists and creators, right? And so it's a way to say, let's do something practical together, right? So no, as to your point, Lillian, I'm not sitting over here saying, oh, we are terrible at this. I'm saying, let us create spaces and avenues for these things to happen, to make change, to model different ways of approaching things. And so
Exactly.
that's definitely one of them, for sure. And there is also, to your point, a big difference between being performative and being an advocate who might mess up sometimes, but whose heart is in the right place and is really trying to do better. And, it is
Exactly.
okay to make mistakes. It is okay to make mistakes as long as you repair the harm, you get up, you keep going. You don't wallow in guilt and shame, you keep going. Because wallowing in guilt and shame doesn't help anyone. And
Mm.
yes, so getting back to colorism, yes, I did a master's in media and culture some time back. And the book that became Exploring Shadism was that research, which was done in the Caribbean, and it was about discrimination in the Black community on the basis of the shade of your skin, right? Which we know exists, and it doesn't just exist
Yes.
in our community, it exists in many other communities as well. I know, for example, colorism is rife in India, just to give you one
Yes.
example. And most post-colonial settings, anywhere the Europeans went, you'll probably find a little bit, you'll find a little bit of colorism. And so that is something that we have to address ourselves. We have to say, well, are we happy with the people that we are when we look in the mirror? Are we constantly trying to make ourselves more European in feature, behavior, language, outlook? Are we, how do we feel about the different cultures of our ancestors? Is there a difference between how we feel about the culture of our African ancestors versus our European ancestors? And
Yeah.
those are uncomfortable questions to ask because many of us were raised to privilege whiteness as a standard. Even those of us who clearly are not white, but you grew up in a post-colonial setting. And I remember my aunts combing their hair at weekends. I remember applying for a job in Barbados and being told I could not wear my hair in braids. If I got the job, I would have to straighten my hair. Right. And
Wow.
so, there's all of that we have to look at as well.
Yes.
To what extent are we still living by those norms that were imposed on us during enslavement and colonialism? How ingrained are they in our societies? And the answer is very. And what are we doing? And what are we doing to fight them?
Oh, that's a very big question and a very good one, especially not just what are we doing to fight them, but what are we doing to make sure that people don't die for it. And I say that and it sounds dramatic, but I know women who and men who are literally poisoning their skin in that
Mm.
desire for whiteness or lightness.
Mm.
And there are whole
Yeah.
industries that have been established that are literally selling poison in
Yeah.
tubes.
Stop using hydroquinone, people, right? Those skin lightening creams, right? Because, yeah, I remember people saying, oh, you've got a dark mark, you should lighten it. Or the whole idea of if you were darker skinned, you couldn't possibly be pretty,
Yes.
for example, right, is pervasive. And so there's a lot of trauma to unpack as well with all of
I
that.
don't think we have enough time on this show to go back then. I think my favorite one I've heard is, "Oh, you're pretty for a dark girl." Like,
Oh, yeah. The anti-blackness, because somewhere the idea is that if you're Black, you can't be beautiful,
yes. And
right?
this is many moons ago. My cousin set me up on this date, and this guy was almost 4 or 5 shades darker than myself. And I remember him telling me, "Oh my God, you're really fun and really nice and really all of these great things, but I can't date you." And I'm like, "Uh-huh." He goes, "Yeah, you're too dark for me." And I was like, my brain glitched and I blinked and I said a few choice words like, and I
Sometimes we
remember
can't.
this is in my 20s and he's like, "Yeah, that he needs to date someone outside of our race because he wants to have children that are biracial." And I remember
Mhm.
getting up and going, "I wish you luck. Have a nice time and lose my number."
But yes, doesn't it show you how pernicious it is? But then that is the legacy of enslavement and colonialism, isn't it, Lillian? It's like, there was a rhyme. there there was a rhyme that was pervasive in the Caribbean, and I don't know if it was in other places, right? It's like if you're Black, stand back, if you're brown, stick around, if you're white, you're all right.
Um,
And there are
we
versions
didn't
of
have that as obvious. We had other things. Yeah, we had others, but it's
I
interesting.
know, right? Yeah.
And that
Can
legacy,
I give you a brain glitch?
yeah, I think my brain has glitched again, and I am grateful that we are in 2025 heading into 2026. No, the problems haven't gone away, but we are so much further than where we have been. And I am
Sure.
thankful for people like you who are in that work to undo that trauma, to undo that legacy, to undo the birthing of that very strange fruit. And
Yes.
because that is the only way we're going to heal. And I know that I'm going to throw a question in because here's the question. Your work looks at all the intergenerational trauma
Mhm.
that collectively lives. And here's the thing, I say this trauma that is racism does not just impact us, it impacts humanity. It's a humanity stain,
Yes.
not just a Black problem. It's a
Absolutely.
humanity stain. Is the one thing that I find that we do a lot, especially in the global majority, we talk about intergenerational trauma, right?
Mhm.
I find the one thing we don't do so often is talk about the intergenerational blessing. So
Yes.
I'm, we
I
don't do
love
that.
it.
We don't
I
do that.
love it
So I'm going to
because
ask you, looking at your family tree, what is the intergenerational blessing that you have received from that family tree?
my intergenerational blessing is definitely the facility with language and the urge to educate and teach.
Mm,
Right. My mother was a teacher for a hot second, but she was also a librarian. She was a language scholar. My father also, it kind of runs in the family.
mm,
And just while you don't want to have to be resilient, the intergeneration blessing is also that deep knowledge that we have survived, our ancestors have survived terrible things so that we could be here. And so
yes.
we also have that fiber running through us. And that too is a blessing. The reason
Mm,
they needed the resilience is not a blessing, but the resilience is a blessing. Even if you don't want to have to, you don't want the resilience to be all you're about, but you
yes.
like knowing that it is there as a part of you.
I like thinking about it that way because, yeah, sometimes being resilient is a pain. Let's
Oh,
be
yeah,
honest. It's a
it
pain
is. It
because we're
is.
just upholding the system
Yeah,
and we're giving women tools to survive a system that is just no.
no. And we want to undermine the system. We want to take down the system. We want to stop the system from doing harm. But I love that framing of blessings. And it's one of the things actually in my newsletter, in addition to sharing experiences of racism, one of the things I started doing was sharing interviews with Black founders because I wanted to show solutions that
Mm,
people had to the issues that were facing us, to show ingenuity, to show excellence, to show joy, right, as well as all the stuff that is happening. So I
yeah,
definitely like to balance those things because I think it's very important, even in doing this work, not to suggest that everything is terrible, even if it feels like that sometimes, not to suggest that there's nothing that we can do, and to recognize that there are people working on solutions every day and
yeah,
putting new things into practice that can help us get out of this. And we need to be aware of that too. That's part of what gives us hope in this work, I think.
absolutely. And hope is needed. Hope is needed
Essential.
more than ever right now. Hope is required. So I love your work. I love that you are, as a Caribbean British woman, working globally to find the blessing, shine light on the trauma, and actually do the work. You've spoken about invisibility not being equality. How do you define true visibility for Black women in professional and activist spaces?
Oh, that's deep. Yes, I think I've talked before about being seen but unseen,
Mm,
right? So there's a way in which, often as a Black woman, you are seen when there is work to be done or a problem to be solved. You are seen when there's blame to be apportioned, but you're not seen when it's time for promotion and pay rises and things like that. And it's a bit of a tightrope also because of all these stereotypes, about the angry Black woman, about who's
yeah.
seen as being aggressive. or who's seen as being a go-getter and all that kind of thing. So it is really quite difficult in many respects to have that visibility. And in a way, I think we have to create it for ourselves. We have to decide this is who we are, and we have to show up consistently as that person. And you just don't know how it's going to go. I mean, if you had asked me 6 years ago if I would be doing this work now, I'm an introvert. I'm much happier at home with my book, right? Not being online and out there. But the work is too important.
Right.
And so for me, it's about, okay, how do I do this work in a way that honors my introversion, that allows me to be the person that I am, that allows me to show up, but also to rest? How? And I think as Black women, we have to use other tools, because sometimes if you're talking to people and your words are being misinterpreted or being seen through a different lens, sometimes you have to call that out.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to activate your advocates if you have any, right? Because we don't always have any. We might be the only person in there. Nobody might be helping us out, right? But if you have advocates, explain to them what is going on, get them to do a little bit of firefighting for you. Use emails and written documents that if you get them right are less prone to misinterpretation as to tone, right? So there are lots of things that you can do in order to make sure that you are credited for your ideas, and get things in writing, right? As Black women, I don't think that we can be having a lot of side conversations that never get documented, because when it comes time for people to check and say, well, what did that person do? People don't say anything.
Of course.
So when someone else says to you, oh, such and such was great. Oh, you can send them an email thanking them for what they said, right? You get an email back, which will confirm it. There are all kinds of little things that you can do to make sure that you have the evidence when it comes to the time when you have to say, well, I did a great job and here's why I deserve this next step, right?
Absolutely.
No guarantee it will work, but it will help.
Definitely. And there's some of the key things that you have put in place. Yes, always keep a trail is very important. And actually, the one thing that we've been taught as part of this trauma bonding that we have is, oh, we need to keep our head down and do the work. Our work should speak for us. And it's like, absolutely not.
We have to speak for us.
Because the moment we do that head down, do the work, we are then seen as, well, she does the work, she's valuable, so we can't promote her. But the moment you actually start to advocate, and Black and brown women are so great at that advocacy for everybody else but themselves, is you have to learn to advocate for yourself. You have to learn to be in those rooms. We're taught, oh, don't put your head above because it gets chopped off. It's like, well, okay, that's the risk you're going to have to take once in a while. It's find the breakfasts to be in.
Yeah, sometimes if you're not talking, if you're not speaking, if you're not advocating for yourself and nobody else is, then you get stuck. That's why so many Black women end up leaving in order to get a promotion when they'd like to stay with a company that they're quite enjoying, for example, right? You get overlooked. And so you have to have other ways to not be overlooked. But then again, from bringing it back out to a DEI perspective, we have to think about what are the policies? How is information gathered and valued within a company, right? If companies can make it possible for, your Black people, your global majority people, your neurodivergent people, your introverted people to contribute in different ways, even if they're not speaking up in the context of a meeting, because not everybody can, right? I'm a classic example of that as an introvert, right? I would sit very quietly, and then I'd say one sentence at the end, and people would say, oh, she was paying attention, because people assumed that I was disengaged, whereas what I was doing was actively listening. And so, in a way, you have to advocate for yourself, and it will sometimes be uncomfortable, and it won't always be well received. But, sometimes
you are not doing it for you.
Yeah, you do it for everybody else too. You have to call people on that. You have to, and I always cite my friend Linda's questions. My friend Linda Burbridge, she says, who told you that and why did you believe them? And so you ask people when they assume something based on what you said to them, you can counter them. You can ask them why they saw it in that particular way. Would they have seen it in that way had it been from one of your white colleagues? And they'll get upset probably and a little bit flustered. But if you're lucky, they'll go away and think about it.
If one is lucky, yes.
Yes. Otherwise, they may not, but you will at least have interrupted the thought pattern, which is not a bad thing.
Absolutely. And that is a start. Like you said, that interrupting of the thought pattern, it may not be well received in that moment. And if people are, and here's the assumption that you're working with people who are decent, who are open-minded and all of the good things, that sometimes people are acting from a place of bias or a place of unconscious bias, let's phrase it that way, and not realizing, hey, I may have been coming across this way. So being able to interrupt that for a moment, and for them might be just what they need to recognize.
Bring it to their awareness, and then it can never again be unconscious.
Absolutely.
And if they choose then to be actively biased, then they know what they're doing. And they have to sleep at night, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. So I think more women from the global majority, we need to learn to actively advocate for ourselves, corporate spaces, because invisibility doesn't keep you safe. It makes you, people will look past you.
And you need to be able to say no as well. Because, we're almost socialized into being people pleasers, as women and as women of the global majority. So it's a double one.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes you have to say no, that doesn't work for me. No, I'm not doing that. No, whatever it happens to be. Right?
And I know
that's not easy either.
No is a complete sentence.
It is for sure, Lillian. It absolutely is.
No is a complete sentence. So on the show, we often talk about reclamation of voice, space, identity. And I know that you shared about George Floyd being pivotal for you to write the book. Can you share another moment when you fully stepped into your own name and stopped shrinking?
That probably came maybe about a year later.
Right.
I've been writing, I was doing the newsletter. I had started to do a couple of speaking engagements, and somebody said, "Oh, you're an activist." I said, "I am." I said, "I didn't even realize that's what was going on there." And that is the point where I started to claim it. And I started to think, okay, well, yeah, this is something. I mean, I knew I cared about it and I was doing the work anyway. But that was the moment as which I claimed that as one of my identities. It's never stopped. So now I talk about all the things I am because we're not monoliths. Yeah. I've been talking a lot recently about introversion because people find it hard to believe that you can be an anti-racism activist and be introverted. But I'm here to tell you that you can be both.
Exactly. It's not mutually exclusive.
No, not at all. And so, yeah, I can't remember when that conversation was. I have a feeling that I was recording a show somewhere and somebody mentioned it. And I said, wow, I hadn't thought about it. But I suppose if you look at what, I'm doing, yes, it is right. And it's around that time that I actually stopped writing for freelance writing clients.
Right.
And stepped fully into doing this work.
And that is a beautiful thing to claim. That is a beautiful thing to claim for yourself, for your identity, and the work that you do. I have one more question along this line. Okay. What is the legacy that you hope your work leaves behind, not only through your books and platforms, but through the people you've taught and walked beside?
I always talk about the ripple effect, about influencing those I can reach so they can influence others. So I hope that my work is like a pebble or 20 in a pond. And so the work is spreading out and reaching people to make change. I'm already actually really happy. My daughter is a feminist and joins the DEI committee at her university. So I feel like I'm already well along that path there. So that was very pleasing. And I think when I see people change their behavior as a result of being in my spaces or conversations we have had, and then they're able to take those out and have conversations with other people. Because I think it doesn't stop with us.
No.
Erin Corinne Johnson talks about the change we see and the change we seed. And so a lot of this work is about seeding change. I don't think you undo a centuries old edifice within my lifetime, but I can certainly take a good hard swing at the foundations.
Have a good whack at it. And I do love that. And that is a beautiful thing. And I like the imagery of the pebbles and being that single drop. And I think as women, naturally is something that we do anyway.
Yeah.
We always,
we connect, we
yeah,
communicate, we're in community. I think that's how we operate, isn't it? That's also, as women, we do that. As Black women with a particular history, that is also part of our ancestral gift that you were talking
yes,
about earlier. And so it's part of how we show up in the world. It's how we move through the world, and it's part of how we pour into the world.
this is true. And this is true. So I'm so grateful to have you on the show. I want to look at your journey so far from journalist, activist, everything that you've done. What will you whisper or shout to your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year-old self would not believe any of this. My 18-year-old self was the grown-up version of the girl that used to hide in the library at lunchtime and read books. You know, my closest friendship was with the library books at school, probably, at least until I got to about 17. I had friends, but that's where I spent my time. At 18, I'm going to talk to my 21-year-old self, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because I spent a year in France between the ages of 21 and 22, and I experienced the most outrageous racism every day. And at the end of that time, I had to decide, who am I going to be in the face of this? I could choose to be angry. I could choose to hate all white people. I said, no, I am going to be the kind of person who does not treat others in the way that I was treated. And I think if I were to talk to myself then, I would say, yeah, you made the right decision because look at the work you're doing now.
That's beautiful. That is the ripple effect that we just talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That one action has led to this.
It has.
So we salute your 21-year-old self. And here's my final question. What is bringing you, Sharon, joy right now? Even if it's something small and unexpected, what does that look like?
Joy is friends and family and community, right? I have a few very close friends. Getting to spend time with them is always a gift. I mentioned going to the beach. Yeah, I did it again. All right. And
Okay.
just having quiet time to contemplate, you know, very simple, really. Very simple. Good friends, good fellowship, good food. You know, what more do you need?
Not a lot. Not a lot at all.
Yeah.
And then throw in the sunshine. So yeah.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. And having those things feeds your cup so that you can do the work that you do. And we are very grateful that you're doing the work that you do. Tell us, how can people contact you, join the newsletter, let them know how they can stay in touch with you.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my main website is sharonhh.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter on antiracismnewsletter.com. My book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, and a bunch of other places. And you'll find information about the share community also on sharonhh.com.
Okay.
And people can also connect with me on LinkedIn, which is where I'm most active.
All right. I will put those links in the show notes. You'll be able to find them. Reach out to Sharon if you want to discuss anti-racism, being an advocate, a true ally, even what you can do on a day-to-day basis to ensure that you're not unconsciously walking through this life and creating more trauma in its wake, how you can actually deal with your own shadyism, colorisms. Reach out to Sharon and have that conversation.
Thanks so much, Lillian.
So I want to thank you again for being on the show. And yes, we're going to stay in touch. And I can't wait for you to come back to the UK.
Oh, yes, I am hoping to be back next summer for Quiet Queen's version 2.
Yay! All right. Thank you so much. Guys, you know what to do. Follow us, share the show. Don't let your people miss out. And if you have enjoyed the show, send us a message. If you know someone who should be on the show, drop us a message on socials and we will connect with you. So I'm going to say, have a very good evening. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to In Her Own Name. Step into your week, lit up, aligned, and fully you. If you are enjoying this podcast, share it with your people. Don't let them miss out. And connect with us on all places social.